Donald Trump has just blown up months of US-Canada trade negotiations, and not because of some complex economic dispute or high-stakes diplomatic standoff. No. He ended it all over an advertisement. An ad made not by Ottawa, not by Prime Minister Mark Carney, but by the Government of Ontario, a provincial campaign that dared to do the unthinkable, use Ronald Reagan's own words to call out Trump's reckless tariff policy. That's right. The ad didn't use opinion. It used history, Reagan's 1987 radio address, where he warned Americans that high tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation and are a hidden tax on the consumer. $75 million were spent to broadcast this message across the United States, a message that reminded Americans of the free trade values their own conservative icon once stood for. And Trump. He exploded. Within hours, he declared the ad fraudulent, claimed that Canada had cheated and got caught, and insisted that Reagan loved tariffs. But the truth is painfully clear, Reagan said the opposite, word for word. The tape still exists, the speech is public, and the quote is exact.
Good morning, I'm Matt Scooby. This is CTV News Channel. Thanks for being with us. We start with U.S. President Donald Trump abruptly terminating all trade negotiations with Canada over an anti-tariff ad paid for by the province of Ontario. It's been airing on most major networks in the United States. Here is a bit of that ad.
High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars.
The Ontario government paid $75 million for the ad that features the voice of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan from a radio address back in May of 1987. And earlier this morning, Trump posting once again about the ad, doubling down in a way, saying Canada got, quote, cheated and got caught. Trump goes on to claim that Canada fraudulently said that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, which Trump claims he loved, even also claiming that Canada was trying to illegally influence the upcoming Supreme Court ruling on Trump's tariffs as well.
So why would the President of the United States pick a fight with his northern neighbor over an ad quoting his own hero? Because pride burns hotter than policy. Trump wasn't defending America. He was defending his ego. He couldn't handle being publicly corrected, especially not by Canadians, and especially not using Ronald Reagan, the man Trump's own supporters still revere. The irony? This wasn't even a Canadian federal government initiative. It was Ontario's provincial campaign. But Trump lumped the entire country together and punished it for insulting him. He terminated trade talks overnight, misattributing the ad to Ottawa, and claimed, without evidence, that it was some illegal attempt to influence a U.S. Supreme Court ruling.
Before moving forward, do subscribe for Parliament updates.
It wasn't. It was just history, speaking louder than spin. But this isn't just about bruised pride, it's about the consequences of a leader who uses trade as a political weapon. Trump's tariffs have already backfired, American factories are struggling, prices are up, and cross-border trust, once the foundation of North American prosperity, has been shattered. And while Washington melts down in a storm of anger and falsehoods, Canada has stayed calm. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, didn't take the bait. He didn't tweet, he didn't rage, he spoke with quiet precision that hit harder than any insult ever could. The 1980s were a different time, Carney said. U.S. trade policy used to reflect shared prosperity. And then the line that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles, Reagan built bridges. Trump burns them. That single sentence summed up the entire crisis.
We can't control the trade policy of the United States. We recognize that that policy has fundamentally changed from the policy in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s. And it's a situation where the United States has tariffs against every one of their trading partners to different degrees. And it's in that context that our officials, my colleagues, have been working with their American colleagues on detailed, constructive negotiations, discussions on specific transactions, specific sectors, steel, aluminum, and energy. And a lot of progress has been.
Canada wasn't just defending itself, it was defending the idea of rational, evidence-based trade policy against the chaos of populist politics. Carney's message was simple but powerful. Canada will no longer depend on an unpredictable neighbor that weaponizes trade for political theater. He's right. Because when one partner treats trade like a campaign stunt, the other has to grow beyond the relationship. And that's exactly what's happening. While Trump shouts on social media, Carney is quietly reshaping Canada's economic future. New trade deals with Europe, India, Japan, and China are opening doors that Washington has slammed shut. Canada is diversifying and thriving, while America isolates itself behind tariff walls. Even Trump's own advisors can't keep the story straight. Kevin Hassett, the head of Trump's National Economic Council, admitted that this wasn't just about the ad, that frustration has built up over time. But that only proves the point. Trump's so-called frustration with Canada is about control, not cooperation. He wants submission, not negotiation. And Canada isn't playing that game. When Trump walked away from the table, Carney didn't flinch. He didn't beg for talks to resume, or call it a tragedy. He simply kept building, trade by trade, deal by deal, with partners who respect fairness and truth. So let's be clear, this isn't a loss for Canada. It's a turning point. Trump's decision to cut off trade talks doesn't show strength. It exposes weakness, a leader so wounded by a quote from history that he'd rather break a partnership than face the facts. Because this entire crisis began with one voice, Reagan's, reminding the world that tariffs hurt consumers and spark trade wars. That's not left or right. That's reality. Trump tried to rewrite history. But history, this time, talked back. When Donald Trump stormed away from trade negotiations, he thought he was teaching Canada a lesson. But what he actually did was hand Mark Carney the greatest moment of his premiership, a moment that defined not just Canada's resilience, but the country's independence in a post-American world. Because the truth is, Canada no longer flinches when Washington growls.
So, look, if you're to take his social media posts over the past 12 hours or so at face value, this move to terminate the negotiations is all about the ad. You got to keep in mind now that his posts about the ad are littered with falsehoods. He calls it fraudulent for saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, that he actually loved tariffs. He calls it fake in all caps, even though the ad uses Reagan's own words from a radio address. And Trump repeatedly attributes the ad to Canada rather than Ontario. But hey, in Donald Trump's history of saying things that aren't true, that's probably pretty small potatoes. Still, he did specifically say that what he called Canada's egregious behavior is why he was terminating the talks.
For decades, U.S. presidents dictated the tone of North American trade. If Washington sneezed, Ottawa caught a cold. But not anymore. Not under Carney. He's not just navigating a trade dispute, he's redefining Canada's global identity. Carney's approach has been surgical, no bluster, no theatrics, just calm diplomacy backed by hard economics. While Trump rants about fraudulent ads and fake news, Carney is quietly expanding Canadian trade routes from Halifax to Hamburg, from Vancouver to Mumbai. Because the real strength of a nation isn't measured by how loudly it shouts, it's measured by how steadily it moves forward when chaos hits. And let's not forget what triggered this entire meltdown, an Ontario ad quoting Reagan. Not a protest. Not a threat. Just a reminder of truth. That's what terrified Trump. Not the ad's budget, not the message, but the fact that the message came from his own political lineage. Reagan was the Republican icon of free trade. To see his words revived by Canada, and used against Trump's tariffs, was like holding a mirror to the White House and forcing it to confront its own hypocrisy. So Trump did what he always does when cornered, he lashed out. He twisted facts, called Canada dishonest, and manufactured an excuse to walk away before admitting defeat. But walking away doesn't erase the truth. Reagan's words still echo louder than Trump's outrage. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation. Tariffs are a hidden tax on the consumer. That's not partisan rhetoric, that's economic law. And in trying to silence that truth, Trump only amplified it. Now, the irony is breathtaking. The same America that once led the world in free trade is now watching its northern neighbor take up the mantle it dropped. Carney's Canada has become the steady hand in a stormy world, the country that doesn't react to every insult but responds with progress. And if you watch closely, you'll notice something. Every time Trump escalates, Carney gets stronger. Every attack makes Canada more self-reliant. Every tariff pushes Canadian innovation. Every insult makes diversification not just a policy but a mission. The Prime Minister's message couldn't be clearer. We can't control U.S. trade policy, Carney said, but we can control our response. That's leadership. The kind that doesn't chase applause or followers, it earns respect through patience and clarity. And that's what the world is noticing. Canada's new trade deals with Europe, Japan, India, and even China are proving that the country can stand tall without leaning on Washington's shadow. For the first time in decades, the balance of confidence in North America has shifted northward. Trump can end talks. He can post rants. He can rewrite speeches and pretend Reagan said the opposite of what he said. But he can't rewrite history. He can't erase the fact that Reagan's America believed in cooperation, not confrontation. And he can't change the fact that, right now, it's Canada carrying that torch forward. As the dust settles, the contrast between these two leaders couldn't be sharper. Trump yells. Carney builds. Trump fights the past. Carney shapes the future. And while Trump weaponizes trade, Carney is using it to strengthen alliances, turning every American tariff into a reason to innovate, adapt, and expand. So where does this leave us? It leaves Canada in a rare position of strength, globally respected, economically diversified, and morally grounded in fact rather than fiction. Trump's walkout wasn't the end of trade talks. It was the end of America's monopoly on leadership in North America. Because for once, it's not the U.S. setting the tone. It's Canada. And it's doing so not through anger but through integrity. This moment will be remembered not as a trade collapse but as a national awakening. The day Canada stopped reacting and started leading. So when Trump slammed the door shut, Carney didn't pound on it. He built a new one. One that opens toward Europe, Asia, and every nation willing to trade in good faith. And that's the lesson here: pride can end negotiations, but truth outlasts tantrums. Ronald Reagan said tariffs were a hidden tax on the people. Trump tried to hide that truth, but Canada made sure the world heard it again, loud and clear. And as Trump retreats into his echo chamber, Canada moves forward, calm, factual, confident, reminding everyone that diplomacy isn't weakness. It's wisdom. That's why Mark Carney's leadership resonates beyond borders. Because it proves something we often forget: in a world of noise, the quiet voice of reason always wins in the end. So to everyone watching, this is not just a story about trade. It's about truth versus ego. About leadership versus theater. And about a small northern nation reminding a superpower what strength really looks like. If you believe in that kind of leadership, if you believe in reason, honesty, and standing tall for what's right, then this channel is where you belong. Join this community, subscribe, and share this story. Because together, we make sure the truth never goes silent again.
Canada Debates.